Fine.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I am Mohammed Al-Mubarak, the chairman of the Department of Culture and Tourism. And it's my honor today to be sitting with an esteemed panel of my friends, of my colleagues, of my teachers. All of the individuals that I'm going to be speaking with today are people who played a huge part into publicizing and into broadcasting culture to the world. They have done an immense job within their institutions in doing so. They have showcased to the world the importance of history, the importance of culture, the importance of art, and the beauty of art, and the beauty of culture, and what it means to us, and how it is a major part of our DNA. And no matter what stands in our way, difficult times, tough times, we always go back to that culture, because it's what defines us. It's what makes us smile. When we think of music, when we think of a piece of art, when we think of some piece of archaeology, some piece of our history, this is what basically makes us who we are. And like I said, I'm privileged and I'm honored to be sitting with royalty today, museum royalty. It's a very special occasion to be sitting with you individuals, everybody here. Obviously, it makes sense to be on International Museum Day. You know, since 1977, the 18th of May has been the International Museum Day. And today we're sitting together, we're going to conversate between friends, between colleagues, between a really close family. This is a family here. I think everybody who plays a part into what we're trying to do in showcasing and instilling culture to the world is a part of our family. So welcome to my family. Welcome, Professor Michael.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jean-Luc Martinez.
Hello, Mohammed.
Welcome, Richard. How are you, my friend?
I'm
It's
well.
always good to see you. And welcome from, of course, the British Museum, Hartwig Fisher. So these are four of the most unbelievable institutions. They have played a huge part of my growing up. I remember at the earliest stage of my life visiting the Louvre, Paris for the first time, and my jaw dropped to the ground and I was in awe. And then I remember my first visit to St. Petersburg, and all I can do is just ask questions at the Hermitage. Ask questions about myself, ask questions about the world. Then I remember visiting the Guggenheim for the first time and seeing this beautiful building that seemed to me it just went in circles to an infinite world. Looking up for the first time in it, it was a brand new experience, walking with almost no stoppages around this beautiful building. And of course, the British Museum, you know, the earliest memories I have is in the British Museum. That is the reason why I'm here today. And, you know, before we get to the discussion of where we are and what we're going to be talking about is, why am I talking to you from Abu Dhabi? There's a reason why I'm talking to you from Abu Dhabi. And if everybody can see, in my background here, I have a picture of the father of the nation, His Highness Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan, God rest his soul. He was a lover of culture. And from the beginning, before the formation of the Federation, he understood the power of culture, just like all of you individuals understand the power of it. And he wanted to form a museum. And this museum was not just about the history of the UAE, but this was the museum that basically wanted to tell his people and the people of the world how the UAE has always been connected to different cultures, different regions, different religions. And it's a part of our DNA. So this is the main reason that I'm here. The second reason that I'm here, I've spoke to all of you over the last several weeks during this pandemic. And I think one thing that was heartwarming for me is when we first spoke about ourselves, how well we're doing, how our families are, how we can help each other. And just hearing your voices was something that was extremely pleasurable for me. But I was doing it, one, because you're my friends. And the second main reason is I was asked to do it by His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Zayed, who has been a lover of culture and who's really been carrying this cultural flag over the last 10 years, wanting to make sure that world culture is broadcasted from the UAE. And he's told, and I remember sitting with him and he told me, you know, Mohammed, one thing that is imperative and it's so important that during this tough time, culture is not seen secondary. It cannot be seen secondary. It has to be seen as an important, integral part of any society. So when we will come out of this pandemic, our institutions have to be in the front line. They have to be the places that remind people who we really are, that we are human beings, that we're always going to be connected, and that our cultures are a part of our history, and we're going to make new history together. So a bit of a history lesson on why I'm here. The individuals that are on this meeting have all played a role into our cultural strategy here in Abu Dhabi. You know, you look at what we've done over the last 30 and 20 years, it's been quite immense. But if we really focus on the last 10 years, you know, our cultural plan with how we're going to be broadcasting local culture and international culture hand in hand has been a strategy that we've been worked on with everybody within this call. Whether it is the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, or the Louvre Abu Dhabi, or the Zayed National Museum, or many of the other institutions from Qasr al-Husn to many of our centers that we have in Abu Dhabi, you all have played a role in that. And I want to thank you for that. You know, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed has a dream that one day when people come to Abu Dhabi, it's basically they feel this power of connectiveness. Whether when they visit the Louvre Abu Dhabi and they see this beautiful curation and museography of universality, or they visit the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi and they see the true world power of contemporary art sitting side by side in all its glory, in an equal pedestal with no differences from anywhere else in the world, any religion, any region. And to visit the Sheikh Zayed National Museum, the museum that will tell the world about the great history of this land, and many of the other institutions to come. So again, you have played a role into this. I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Like I said in the beginning when I introduced you, you guys are family, you're friends, but more importantly to me, you've been my teachers. And I thank you for that. Of course, obviously, you're all extremely young individuals. So you're not much older than me, but it's been truly an honor to be with you. And I can't wait to hear what we're going to be talking about today. Like I told you when we were speaking offline, I want us to imagine ourselves sitting in a beautiful restaurant, enjoying each other's company on a beautiful meal, and just talking about the world of museums today. You know, what's encompassing out of it? Where do we see the future? You know, I'm sure all of you right now behind your, hidden somewhere in your homes, you have this globe, this crystal globe that you're looking at, and you can tell how the world's going to look like, especially our world's going to look like. And it's going to be really interesting for us to all listen to what you're going to say. So really, the floor is all yours, and we're all ears, and we're really excited to hear about the places of civic engagement, inspiration, and rebuilding in the pandemic age. So thank you all for your time. And I really can assure everybody who's listening, this is going to be a fantastic show for everybody. So again, just for to remind everybody who's on this call, we have Professor Mikhail Petrovsky from the Hermitage. We have Richard Armstrong from the Guggenheim, New York. We have Jean-Luc Martinez from the Louvre, Paris. And of course, we have Hartwig from the British Museum. So if you allow me, gentlemen, shall we just jump into this?
Go ahead.
Right.
Fantastic. So we're going to be broken up into several parts. Part one is the evolving societal role of museums. And, you know, this is a subject matter that is, of course, extremely interesting for all of us. And museums are cultural and creative commons where people of different ages, backgrounds, and interests can engage in generating social capital and strengthening the public sphere. That's why we're all here. That's why we believe about our institutions. They're also instruments of soft power or exercising influence through cultural and peaceful means. In this sphere, museums are increasingly connected to one another and in collaboration with civil society or third sector organizations. So in this context, gentlemen, I have several questions. I'll start with one. The societal role of museums as places for civic engagement and cultural exchange is well established. How do we define being public in this time and in this age? And how do we also connect with our public? I'll leave the floor to you. Jump in at any time.
Well, I think we're all lucky because we live in great cultural centers that also attract a multitude of tourists. Now we look at a different situation for a short time at least, where our audience is likely to be much more localized. I think it gives us the opportunity to reassert our sense of importance, but also connection to the people who are physically closest to us, always reminding ourselves that shortly the world will open up again. And in our case in particular, how crucial it is that we be deeply involved with a sense of international exchange. But I think for the moment, we all feel a different kind of metabolism as well as attraction to local audience.
Well, yes, in a way, we're all local and national and global institutions, museums, collections. And it's been very important for our audiences to be able to stay connected with us over these last weeks, I think. And it has shown how great the need is to engage with what museums hold in store. Knowledge, inspiration, and the possibility to think about the world, to think about the human condition through art, through history, through archaeology, through everything the museums we represent. But I think actually we've made all that during these weeks, local, national, and global museums, in a moment where through this crisis, I think we've all felt that even though we are, so to say, in exile at home, most of us, or very limited in our scope right now, this is a global moment. This is a truly global moment. This is a pandemic that affects most parts of the globe and that all of us have to deal with. And I think it has made us aware, and you said this in your introduction, there is a global community of audiences and museums, and they share the same conviction that engaging with art, engaging with culture is a key part of defining themselves. And I think, if anything, what we've experienced over these last weeks has strengthened that notion.
May I?
Yes, Professor.
Well, أول شيء هذا مسرور جدا أن أكون هنا معكم في وأبو ظبي أساس ومركز هذا اللقاء. I'm extremely glad that we are meeting here, and Abu Dhabi is the center of our meeting. And
اسمح لي بروفيسور، اللي ما يعرف البروفيسور ميخائيل دكتور باللغة العربية وهو معلم باللغة العربية، ومن أفضل اللي فاهم اللغة، ومن أفضل لكيف يفهم أهمية اللغة العربية في عالمنا اليوم. فتفضل بروفيسور.
شكرا جزيلا. Really, we are here, we are all together, and we are talking about things which are extremely important. All this crisis showed to everybody and to us once more things which we have been always talking about, that museums are really important. People need us. Now in these 2 months, we have got 30 million visitors to all our social media. For us, it's a lot. And we feel that we are needed. Everybody understands now also another thing, that we are just not entertainment. Certainly people love to visit museums different ways, online, offline, but we are not entertainment. We are medicine. We are medicine, a psychological medicine in these difficult days and months. I hope it will finish, but we'll never forget that we are very important medicine. It's a soft power, it's a soft medicine, and we are proud of being this. There is another thing which is very important. We museums, and it's very clear now when we are discussing with 5 museums and over Abu Dhabi, discussing together, museums are bridges which bring nations together and cultures together. And we are in a period where there is a big possibility that countries are becoming more and more divided. We're speaking about distancing, social distancing. We're speaking, and we are afraid we'll speak about the political distancing and cultural distancing. We have to keep our bridges open. We must understand, we have to fight to keep these bridges. We want to work hard to have this movement of these bridges, permanent exchange of cultures and discussions, because there is a big temptation to cut relations. Everybody is thinking about himself. we still have to think about all of us, about the world.
Shukran, Professor. Jean-Luc.
Yeah, in fact, this period is very special for everybody, but maybe the museums are aware and are a good place to build a community. For the Louvre and in Paris, of course, the main challenge maybe is to be a local place for the Parisian first, because now the borders are closed, so we have to work for in June and July with the Parisian first and with this area, because and after that to build something for the world, not only for the local audience, but for the world. And maybe it's an opportunity to share values, to build this community here in Paris, and after for the world. And maybe the opportunity with a global museum like Hermitage, British Museum, or the Guggenheim, is to be part of the heart of a city. Because it's finally we are like a district with gardens, with courtyards, and it's possible to be open to the audience, even if at this moment we are closed. So maybe for May and June, it will be a big challenge to do this during this closing of our museum, to be part of it.
Absolutely, Jean-Luc. And listening to everybody here, I think one thing that we can take out of this pandemic is definitely has kickstarted our digital evolution, and not our transformation, but our evolution within our institutions. As Professor Michael said, yes, we all understand that this is medicine. Culture is medicine. It's medicine for the heart and medicine for the mind. And how are we going to be showcasing this medicine in a much larger scale? Not just for people to visit our museums and enjoy them, but how are they going to enjoy it from their homes, from their phones? And I think that's a tool that's going to be extremely powerful for us. And it will bring in even more people to our museums. At the same time, I think we've heard the word how this is a cultural bridge. And also we've heard from you, Jean-Luc, how it's important in forms of connectivity. I think this is the period where we strengthen these bridges, where we make these bridges unbreakable. And I think whether it is within our collections, this is the time we really can make our museography, our curatorial strategies pretty much talk to each other. I think it's something that could be quite special. If you allow me, I think I want to move to the second question. And we've talked right now about museums as very important physical spaces in our communities. We've heard from you, Jean-Luc, specifically on that regard. In an age where social distancing and likelihood of reduction of attendance in the short term is going to happen, what are the new strategies and practices museums can use to sustain their important social role?
If I may, we have many tools to face this situation. With online tickets, it's possible to control the affluence of visitors, and it's possible to reassure our visitors, because we are during these weeks and these months, we have first to reassure our visitors, and with online tickets, with a specific time of entrance, it should be possible. And after that, of course, maybe we have to promote small groups, for example, family groups or groups of little groups with friends, something like this. I'm sure this could be the first step to reassure our visitors. And I'm sure that my colleagues are working on the same tools, with the same tools.
Of course, it's, I think that is really key. What this pandemic has caused is great insecurity and anxiety, I think. And when people now move back into the public realm, I think it's key that we manage, that we create an environment where they feel safe. Now, safety is not only a question of measures being put in place. All these measures that will enforce social distancing, cleaning, and all these things that are necessary will be put in place. It's also, I think, a shared effort. You know, when you go there, each and every one will be asked to abide by certain rules. And that too will create a community. As you know, that's what happens in a museum. When you visit a museum, you visit it together with others. You have the encounter with the objects, with the collection, but you do this together with others. So it's not only a moment of communion with art, with culture, with the past, it's also a moment of communion with people from all walks of life and from all continents. Now, not see this come back right from the beginning, but I think the clearer we are about what it takes to reopen museum and be a safe place, a safe medicine, so to say, for our visitors, the sooner we will see people come back and make use of the museum again.
May I think what is very important, just again to show what we are always showing, museums are friendly. We are friendly for our visitors. We always are, but still we have to express it because people are rather frustrated and they are angry. So they're coming to the museum to get some calm and, well, to feel really, as you mentioned, safe. And in this, well, aspect, I want to stress and to try to discuss this term which you have, social distancing. In Russian, I don't know who invented it. In Russian, it's so terrible. Social distancing. It doesn't mean you stand in one line 2 meters. It means you go through different entrances. It means the society is divided. It means that museums are becoming luxury. Online is for the poor. Museum is for the rich. Something like this. We have to overcome this division of society, not only division of the countries, but division of society, which could come out of all these results of pandemic and of our rules and restrictions which are going to impose on our visitors. Not us, but, well, the situation. Thank you.
Well, I think, Mohammed, you're so right in using the word kickstart, the digital evolution. And I think Mikhail is very right in wondering what kind of divide does this offer between haves and have-nots. But I think it's also incumbent on us to realize that into future, there essentially will be 2 museums, the physical one and the portable one. And we have to make certain that they're well integrated. And that, to me, the biggest sort of hurdle is not the inability of certain people to connect with the digital, but rather the division of age, where certain people are overly friendly, let's say, with one and not the other. And we have to make certain that the portable museum is a kind of invitation to know the physical museum as well. But it's certainly a moment of kickstarting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can assure you, Professor, with everybody on this call, we will make sure that museums will be for all. And we will not allow it for any type of segregation or any type of social priority. Moving forward, if you allow me, to part 2 of our conversation, which is going to be focused on museums as drivers of economic recovery and urban regeneration. So I think we all know that museums are engines of economic and urban regeneration, arguably more importantly than ever after COVID. The role of tourists in the museums and their critical contribution to sustainability of the museums across the world. These are all critical aspects that we have to really look into. And I think now is the time to strategize on how we're going to be in the front lines of this when we're out of this pandemic. So a couple of questions. We'll start off with, so tourism has been an economic driver for many cities, and museums have been a major tourist magnet. Are there ways museums can support the rebuilding of the tourism economy?
It's quite simple, doing our job. That's mean open the museum, because
I think also you have to admit that inquisitive people often have courage. They're very likely to move around more quickly than other people, and that's our core audience.
Yes, I think we have to, well, remember and remind that tourism as money is not the museum's mission. Museums do earn money. But in certain situations like this, we work, but we can't earn money. Well, I'm very glad that for many months and years, I was telling our government, please don't demand big number of visitors. Please don't demand profit for us. It's a good thing, but it can't be an obligation. Now they do understand. Now when they're getting some money, when they tell it is support, it's not support. And I'm telling you, it's not your support to us. It's compensation for what we have lost because of your arranging society. And it's an important thing to remember. Tourists are good, but museums is a secondary thing attracting tourists. The main thing is our local population, children, and people who just come, not as a tourist, just come to see the museum. I think doesn't sound very democratic and open-minded, but I think it's very important to remember that there is a museum mission which is not economic. And we think about economy and about money, but we can't work because of this, and this brings money. So it's complicated. I think there is an economic way which we're discussing with our colleagues, how to monetize other ways of museums working, not just bringing crowds of tourists into a museum. Things online, lectures, I don't know what, but how to get money, but not with crowds of tourists. It's so wonderful to have very few people in the museum.
Yeah.
Let me say also,
Richard, go ahead. Go ahead, Richard.
Only to say that what Mikhail says is quite important, but we also have to remember there's a non-tangible aspect to the role of the museum. And I would point to the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao as an amazing catalyst towards a new confidence and happiness in that part of the world that's really, I think, changed the game very much to the credit of the Basque for their excellent planning and execution, but also to my predecessor, Tom Krenz, who recognized this possibility. We don't really want to talk about money because it's not our expertise. We can talk about growing self-esteem. We can talk about a deeper sense of knowledge and a better connection to a larger world.
All right.
You know, I think, you know, when the British Museum was founded in 1753, people wanted it to be there for the British public, but also public from abroad, from the very beginning. And they wanted it to be open for the studious and the curious, so the specialists and the general public. And they wanted it to be open for people from all walks of life. And I think when you think about the role of museums for regeneration, I think that they are key players in making culture accessible to everybody. And I've said once you cross the threshold of the British Museum, there are no foreigners because it's a world country. It's a wish, but it's also reality. And I think it is that spirit of global community which blends the spirit of national and local identities that is the great offer of museums to their cities, to their places. This is what makes them, apart from the collection, such interesting, such attractive places and venues people want to go to, people want to explore. They also want to be part of that global community you experience in such a place. So I think museums as places of learning, of encounter, and I would always say, yes, digital has now grown into yet another dimension, and it will keep growing. It will add to what remains at the core of the museum, that you as an individual come here and you encounter this one object and it blows your mind and it is a revelation for you. And knowing that you can make this experience in one place for that very place, and that goes for all our cities, is a major driver of development and I think perpetual regeneration.
I mean, all of you are absolutely right. And I think we can really get the best of all worlds. Specifically talking here in Abu Dhabi, seeing the Louvre Abu Dhabi, coming to fruition. Over 60% of the visitors who come to Louvre Abu Dhabi are tourists from all over the world. And I tend to sit back every once in a while and see how the tourists react to what they're seeing for the first time, whether it's the beautiful architecture of the building, but more importantly of the artifacts and the pieces of art inside the museum. And I love the fact that it is an educational center. That's why we're all here. We're here to educate, whether we educate the masses, educate our children, educate the world. And I love the fact, like, for example, when I talk about my specific culture and my history, when people visit the Louvre Abu Dhabi, people from China or people from Southeast Asia, people from Europe, and they see an object, as Hartwig just said, they see an object that basically relates back to them in some way or form, but this object is eminently Emirati. They understand the connectiveness between the two cultures, and we're educating. And that's the power of our institutions. So as Professor Mikhail said, sometimes maybe too much is too much. So we need to find the right balance. But at the end of the day, it will work hand in hand. And we are all here to see more institutions that share our cultural values come to light. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Well, I think in the notion of making a great civic space, the museum is an unusual opportunity, as you say, to mix various kinds of people. And then we have an ingredient that really is not available to many others, which is we can stimulate the imagination. And that's one of our greatest attributes to me. And I think that helps build community, as well as making certain that people who might be a little more eccentric, as we might have been when we were younger, feel that they're part of a larger society.
I would like to remember that my first European museums in the 18th century finally were very linked with the beginning of tourism, with the Grand Tour in the 18th century, and a museum like the Louvre or like the British Museum too are finally in the 19th century very linked with the world exhibitions too. So it's not so simple. I'm sure we have no to choose between our educational role and our touristic role. It's not a bad world to be a tourist spot. And in fact, in the Louvre, we are at the heart of an economic power in Paris, and we have to face this. No?
Yes, well, I think that with the economic power of the museums comes from its educational and cultural thing, even if, well, British Museum doesn't charge for entrance, but still it is an important economic power for bringing people to Britain and maybe presenting kind of enlightened philosophy. Museums are certainly about many cultures, but when we speak about dialogue of cultures, today we love to speak about dialogue of cultures, it's not just something abstract. It's a thing which is against another thing which you also can find in the museum, wars of memory. All museums items can be used as a perfect base for enmity, wars, and whatever. This belongs to this belongs to this. In history, we oppressed you oppressed us, and then who was the victory? To whom does this belong? Where are the borders and the map you have, and so on. We have to bring it all together into kind of dialogue of cultures. And this is what our address to the different kinds of people, foreigners, not foreigners, tourists, not tourists. I hate just to divide people. It's statistical, and people demand how many foreign tourists do you have, and so on. Certain period, just beginning that end of last year, I forbid to count number of Chinese visitors, because everybody was asking, how many Chinese do you have? And I said, it's no different, Chinese or no Chinese. Please, we don't count them. Well, foreigners, well, we know numbers of people who pay the full ticket, who pay this reduced ticket, who come free. These numbers we do have. I think this is, certainly it was a little bit of exaggeration, but we have to, well, educate everybody and to have, well, link to everybody in the world.
And I think museums, especially those museums that offer objects from 2 million years of human history, but also those who offer art that reflects on this history, are important because they highlight the interconnectedness of cultures throughout the millennia and show that this interconnectedness has been a driving force in the development of humankind.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, as I said, coming to these places, you yourself make a very physical experience of being part of that global interconnectedness, because these are places that attract people from across the world. I would like to come back, however, to something that Mikhail just said about the meaning of social distancing in Russia. Very concretely, when we speak about reopening, it's not only about safety in museums, it's also safety in transport. It's also about making people feel safe when they travel from where they are to the museums. Now, that brings along the problem of who lives where in a big city. How accessible are museums to people? They're most accessible, obviously, to those who can walk or bike. Less accessible to those who have to take public transport. And with that goes the risk of social differentiation. Those who live in the center are mostly those who are more affluent. And I think in managing the reopening, we will also have to keep an eye on that and make sure that we have not different entrances, if you like, different degrees of accessibility, but that hopefully we will create a situation where the museum remains from the beginning, from the very first day of reopening, accessible, equally accessible to everybody.
Fantastic. And I just want to make a pact with everybody here while we're live, so we can't get away from this after this. We're going to continue this exact discussion. We're going to go to the Louvre, Paris, and we're going to have it there. And then we're going to go to the Hermitage, and we're going to have it there. And then we're going to go to the Guggenheim. And then we're going to go back to the British Museum. Then we're going to come back to Abu Dhabi. Because I think sitting in these physical spaces, while we're all going to be seeing people enjoying beautiful pieces of art and these beautiful artifacts from different places around the world, I think it will really engage the discussion to another level. Moving forward to the third part of our discussion, and it's museums and the virtual world. I know we spoke briefly about this, so we're going to go a little bit more detailed in this context. So these challenging times has really made us focus in creative ways to create unprecedented levels of cultural content, levels that we've never seen in our history. And it's been delivered on our virtual platforms. I see this as a massive positive force. It's just engaging a much larger audience than we've ever engaged. And as Professor Michel and as Jean-Luc said, it is an opportunity for us to gain more interest into our fields. So the question that I really want to ask is there a need to think different about publicness in the virtual and physical realms?
Well, I think we are, please.
Go ahead, Mika.
Okay, we are very much thinking about this because in general, we have the virtual reality and we have our physical reality. Most of the time we think it is parallel. It goes this way and each part helps another part. But now they're coming more and more together into one body. And so how to develop it? I think that there is a recipe how to combine virtual and physical through one of the museum's vision, education like university. Online, you make some preliminary preparational courses, you study some details about the history of the collection. You come prepared and you see, well, real things and you can understand them. And you understand even more than you know, then you come back and once again online through different modern technology, you study the things that you have seen and then you come back to the museum. Well, it's kind of a dream, it doesn't really happen, but it's a way which we think we can manage now to organize somehow, well, like a university works, online, teacher live and online and so on, and writing and listening and meeting. So something like this we try to develop. I don't know exactly how, but Everybody develops it in a certain way. Thanks.
And I think, what we are witnessing now comes from a long history, obviously, of reproductions, of creating replicas of works, either through print, through drawings, through paintings, or through casts, and then the more mechanical devices. And all this leads, it's a huge stream that played a key role for centuries, for millennia, in the dissemination of knowledge and in sharing culture, in sharing, if you like, the unique piece. And this has grown now exponentially, obviously, with digital. And I think we will just continue to see that we will use all these means in parallel, not only in parallel, but also blend them, fuse them, have hybrid forms, create something for the digital world, exhibitions, for instance, that we will no longer see in the physical space. And they will look differently once they go digital, because we wouldn't want the digital just to be a translation from the analog. And at the same time, we would always believe, I think, in the irreplaceable importance of the encounter with the object. But at the same time, we all know from early days on, as soon as we got passionate about the world we now live in, art, culture, history, we all know how important books were, how important prints were, television, photographs, even what friends tell you, even the imagination based on what others tell you is a kind of replica of an original. So I think we're in a big stream, and we're going to swim with it, and things evolve, and we will contribute to as Michael has just said, to new forms using digital to broaden the access to what museums stand for.
Well, let me add to that by saying that one of the challenges will be to finding a different tone digitally, because it's not the same tone of address that you might have in the museum. And that's one of the big challenges, certainly among curators.
Yes, maybe the other challenge is to invent digital exhibitions in which it should be possible to share the exhibition with others, because this is a specific experience for museums, to be able to share something with others. And maybe this is different from purely digital programs. So maybe we have to go further and to do such exhibitions, mixed virtual, mixed with sharing with people something. So maybe this could be, because of course many paintings now, ancient paintings, can no longer travel, for example, and we have to think how it's possible to share this heritage with Chinese people, with Americas, etc., and with the local community too. So maybe we have to invent this kind of new exhibition. Should be a new step.
Could I add to what Jean-Luc said? I think that he just used one word, which I think is absolutely key, and that is sharing. We are custodians, and we are custodians in as much as we enable the true owners of all these collections, who are the citizens of the world, to make use of them. And I think digital will offer yet another dimension in this access, sharing, using globally. And it will help not only to share, it would also help to develop the narratives around the objects in the collections, the collections themselves, and the history of these museums. How did all these museums come to where they are now? And I think these narratives have to be written and rewritten by everybody, by people from all places, on all continents, written and rewritten as equals. And I think digital offers a fantastic opportunity to give an entirely new dimension to this.
I mean, all of us are absolutely right. And I think one thing we all understand is our audience is getting younger. And that's the power of youth. And we have to understand, how do they want to look at things? How do they want to perceive things? And then take that and with our objects, with our paintings, and marry the things together, because we can gain a much bigger audience in that regard. But we need to understand that we need to also evolve and there's many ways to do so. I mean, I have always been an advocate of change. Richard, you know firsthand through many of the meetings we've had on how we want to transform the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi into the museum of the 22nd century. And we've talked about what does that mean. I love the fact, listening to Jean-Luc saying, and in the future, there are some paintings that won't travel anymore. How do we make sure that people from all over the world enjoy these paintings? And today, with the power of technology, you can enjoy an experience that we have never even thought of. You can be engulfed in a Picasso, engulfed in a Da Vinci, or completely engulfed on an ancient artifact from an ancient world. So these are the opportunities we need to take at hand. And we need to, I use the word, we need to marry it. We really have to. We need to basically understand that this is a huge part of our longevity in the future. If you allow me to move to the fourth part of our discussion, and this is on the changing role of artists. Obviously, our museums will not be museums without artists. Artists creating these paintings on the walls, or these beautiful sculptures, or these artifacts. So the role of the artist is an imperative part to any ecosystem that we are living around. So going on to the first question, what is the role of these pivotal stakeholders, the artists, towards the museums now? What is the responsibility of the public as well? And how can they help museums today and in the future?
It's a question for Richard.
I know.
Well, I'll go first because we're a museum of younger
yes.
art.
Richard, that's going to be easier for you.
Yeah, I've always felt in my history inside the art world that artists, for museums of modern and contemporary art, artists are the very first audience. So we need their engagement. We need their support. We also need their criticism, because they see what we're doing in a way that may or may not reflect their intentions, and our effort at synthesizing them inside a larger history may or may not be nuanced enough. But I've always felt that artists, in the case of the Guggenheim, for example, or other museums that I've been allied with, constitute the first audience. But I want them to be critical also.
Well, you're absolutely right. The museums, or many museums, have been created first for artists in their own countries to learn, to study, and so on. I do remember several wonderful exhibitions in the Louvre just about the artists who can come in and copying art in the Louvre, and then examples of them copying in Cézanne's books or papers, in him copying great masters and so on. So we must remember this. And we also, there is another experience we have with Les. On your board of trustees, you have artists and you have collectors. It's very interesting to compare the position artists and collector together, or criticizing or giving advice or giving help to the museums. We try to do it in a smaller scale because it's more not so, we're not accustomed very much to this. And there is another thing, to involve all kinds of arts in the museum. Museum is the temple of the muses, yes? Different muses, different kinds of arts. And now I just want to share, we have a project. I just signed some papers yesterday, which we are doing together with the Kunsthistorische. They have a project called, they have a project about bringing well, the story is you bring 5 artists, we do it, from Russia, and 5 artists from Europe, America, writers from Russia and America. They choose painting from our collection. They write some essay on this, and then actors, theater people make a small, some small performances around this essay written about this piece of art. In consistories, it's worked very well. I hope that, well, it will be for us, it's at least quite a new thing, not just bringing dancers or musicians into the museum, but just several combination of different kinds of art, and to see what will happen and who will like it, and if our normal visitors will like this kind of combination, or maybe they'll say, no, it's better stay alone with one word, one kind of art. So we'll see what will happen.
Yeah. We'll all watch it.
Yeah. We'll share it.
As Richard has said, I think you will find a lot of creators, visual artists, designers, composers, choreographers, what have you, in museums every day, touching base with their forebears, their colleagues, the ones they have to live up to, the ones they look to for inspiration, the ones they challenge and feel challenged by. And working with artists in a museum, I think, opens up a very different approach to what museums curated by curators offer. A much more personalized, a much more visceral approach, perhaps. And that's my experience with Grayson Perry, for instance, who did a wonderful show in the museum, in the British Museum, some years ago, where he combined his own work with objects of the unknown artist, because most of what is in our collection has obviously no name. We don't know who made these objects. And it was a fantastic, completely personal journey that opened up completely new understanding of these objects. And it offered to the public, if you like, the encouragement of coming to these objects with your own, questioning them, and living up to, your very own personal, individual, idiosyncratic approach, and make the best of it. And at other times, working with artists, as we did with Ursula Schulz-Stornberg, the photographer, doing a work on the ancient Middle East and following it all up into the present, into the realm of colonialism, highlighted the effects of deep history across millennia in a completely new way. It was a small exhibition, very focused exhibition. So I think working with artists for museums is really a kind of creative boost for the benefit of the public.
Yes, you're right, Ashish, but the question may be for us now, because many years we work with artists we commissioned contemporary art, or we are working on exhibition with ancient and modern art and contemporary art. But maybe the question for our times is how it's possible to share this freedom of artists with general public. How it's possible to view through their eyes and to share this with a general audience. Maybe it's possible, and we are preparing in Louvre maybe an experience next year with young artists, and in artist residency in the Louvre, to share this with the public through lectures, through maybe little exhibitions. But the challenge for us is how to share this vision and to share this freedom, because in fact, in big museums, maybe it's very difficult to visit a museum like the Louvre. It's very chronological, very impressive, finally. And it's an opportunity maybe to share this freedom.
Very good point.
Please, Richard, go ahead.
I think that's a very good point. One of the things that we collectively are charged with is sustaining imagination, and offering people access to that kind of freedom is a demonstration of that, to my mind.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, one thing that popped into my head when Jean-Luc was speaking, in engaging all kinds of artists. And I think when we talk about the previous question and this question, I remember when the Louvre Paris did something very special and very unexpected. So obviously understanding the youth, the youth of their new visitors, understanding that they need to showcase it in a different light. I mean, what they've done with Jay-Z and Beyonce was really a game changer, because you really mix two different art forms into one, but they're both beautiful art forms. You move the visual arts with the beauty of the art that is in the Louvre, but at the same time, you've had this music that was powerful, it was strong, it just sent vibrations to everybody. And I think everybody won here. So it's not only just focusing on visual artists, but all types of artists. And I believe in today's world where we've all understood that technology is going to play a major role in our future, how we can engage young and new and upcoming artists to play a role in our institutions, whether new or old.
Crucial point, crucial point.
So we're getting to the last part of our conversation. This is the fun part. So in the past few days, we've asked our audience to send some of their questions. Some of them we went through right now, but there's some critical ones that they want to hear from you. So we've selected around 3 questions. I want to thank all the audience for submitting their questions to us. They've all been fantastic questions. We've thought a lot about them. We've talked about them right now. But here are some of them that I want to bring up to our participants. So we'll start with the first one, a tricky one. One of them is a tricky one. One of them is a historical lesson. So we'll start with the historical lesson. So what other pandemics has the Louvre, Guggenheim, the British Museum, and the Hermitage encountered in the past? And how did they respond to them?
Well, we didn't have pandemic, but I think all of us had war, Second World War. During this war, we lived in Leningrad, in the siege of Leningrad, and the life of the museum during the siege is called, there are books written about it's called Ordeal of Hermitage. And now we have been learning from experience of living in isolation. How do you protect your buildings? How do you check your collections when you can't come to see them personally? How do you speak with the people when they can't come to the museum? We have this fantastic story of having excursions in the rooms where you have only frames and no pictures, and telling about the pictures. Now we have possibility of going online and showing this. So we learned quite a lot, small and big pieces. We've been reading the story of Hermitage during the war and using the experience of our fathers, and well, from his personal also, my own father, working together. It helps very much. People do understand that, well, what we have now, it's terrible, but it's nothing to compare with what our museums and all our countries lived through before. Thanks.
In fact, we have no such pandemic situation in the past, but as Michael remembered, between the period between the First World War and the Second World War, it was a very difficult period for European museums. After the Spanish flu, after the First World War. And at this period, finally, museums invented many things. They invented at this period, for example, in France, the first guided tours during the night, the first exhibition outside the museum with a cast collection and photographies, etc., etc. So maybe I would like to remember this period because it was a very difficult period, but in fact, with many inventions. So maybe we have to invent something like that after this crisis.
Absolutely.
Yes, and no, of course, there's never been a pandemic of this magnitude. in the lifetime of our institution, and which is special also in that we are fighting it to the best of our knowledge and capacity, trying to save lives. There are no bombs. There is no secret police who comes to snatch you at night. You're not taken to camps. So it's a very special situation where we have the health issue and the threat of this illness. But at the same time, most of us are at home and in a strange kind of limbo, which you could also, some take as an opportunity to reconnect with things which are important for them. But what the museum offers, if you like, is a lot of objects and a lot of documents that relate to how people live through health issues and health crises and other types of crises in the past, and how they try to protect themselves against, if you like, a foe, an enemy, a threat which they did not really understand. So if you go to the collection of the British Museum, you see a lot of this material, charms and amulets and all sorts of objects that somehow relate to major crises that people had to live up to, had to live through to prevail in the end, and sometimes also to falter.
Richard?
Well, we didn't exist in 1918. The war, we were in World War II. We were also in
I think
moment.
what the audience wanted to hear is, have we ever been in a situation? We've heard from Professor Michael and from Jean-Luc and from Hartwig Fischer in regards of, have we ever been in a situation, whether it was war or a major economic crisis that has put us in a very tough situation that we had to basically come out of?
Though every century has had those moments. I think for the Europeans, that period in the late 1930s into the 1940s was probably the most devastating since the 12th century. In the States, I would say it's not the same kind of sense of crisis. And we've learned so much, even in the last month and a half, about what it can mean to the fabric of society.
Absolutely. I think if we allow me one more question from the audience, and this is, do you think such crises / pandemics will affect the spread and opening of new museums globally?
In fact, yes, indeed. Because, for example, in Paris, they postponed the opening ceremony for the new Pinot collection near the Louvre. But it's due because I suppose they are expecting a better period to open. That's all. So for opening new museums, it's clear. But for the spread, I'm not sure. Not sure at all.
Everything's postponed, yes. Will it be canceled? Let's hope not.
I hope so too.
Yes, I think it's very important, postponed and not canceled. And I think the most important optimistic example of things do happen, this is Louvre Abu Dhabi. Because, well, it's a great example. Well, I always, when I think about Louvre Abu Dhabi, I remember Hermitage. It was founded somewhere nowhere in Russia, very far from the centers of culture, moving art there. And well, then emerged, and we have Hermitage, which is a good, great universal museum. So museums do come out in different situations. We always have to find out some way to help museum life develop and make these bridges which we build, and then things will happen. You never know what will happen. The world needs museums. The world needs museum and medicine from all these pandemics. So it will find some ways to develop old museums and bring out new museums, but we don't know exactly how. Allahu Akbar.
Here, 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 here.
Absolutely.
Yes, I hope, you know, the pandemic has obviously a very powerful negative economic effect and will cause a lot of hardship and will require the best energies and forces to come to terms with it. I think all parts of the world. And my hope would be that what we've been seeing, witnessing in new museum developments in many parts of the world will not be hampered, will not be jeopardized by this. Whatever it is, if it's those fascinating projects in Africa, on Asia, or all continents, we should think about what we can bring and what we can do to keep the momentum, to be partners when we are wanted as partners, to keep that development going, and make sure that through it we create that global community of museums where works circulate and are made accessible to everybody. And I think that's, in a way, what the digital experience foreshadows. In a way, the digital experience says, this is a global collection. It's a global collection. Surf it as one. Explore it as one. And I think in the end, physically and digitally, that's where we should end up. So I think it's very important that museums keep developing, keep being created in all parts of the world to facilitate that sharing, the cooperation, the open exchange, and make that a reality that the citizens of the world are the real owners of what has survived from the past and what is created in the present.
Thank you for that, Hartwig. I mean, I know we could continue talking about this and about how we see things happening for a much longer period of time. I want to thank you for your time. It's been fantastic. I can't wait for us to do this again. I just wanted to leave the audience with a couple of very important things that you have said that will basically echo in my mind for quite some time. Culture is medicine. Museums are bridges of culture, and I hope steel bridges. They are the centers of imagination. They truly are, imagination and education. And we are the custodians of culture. Very powerful words from you, gentlemen. I want to leave you all with a discussion I had just the other day, maybe a week ago, with His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed. And it's very critical to what we're talking about right now, because he ended the discussion when I was telling him, where do you see these institutions in the future? How can we play a role? He said to me, Mohammed, culture is what keeps the heart pumping. It's what keeps the mind young. It needs to be there for the success of our future. I think that was something extremely powerful said to me, and I think it's definitely going to play a major part in everything we do moving forward when it comes to our cultural strategy. So again, my friends, Professor Michael, Jean-Luc Martinez, Richard, Hartwig, it's been great seeing you. Thank you so much for your time. For the audience, thank you for listening to us. I hope everybody to be safe, be healthy, and be happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohammed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.